on what's there. There's a
All
lot
right.
of the AI expansion.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is Thursday, April 25th. It is 9 a.m. here in California and other times elsewhere in the world. This is the SIG Network regular call. As usual, we are governed by the code of conduct, which basically boils down to don't be a jerk. So please don't be jerks. We have an agenda for today that actually has a small number of things, but I suspect we're going to spend a lot of time on them. So let's jump in with some triage, spend a few minutes looking at the current state of issues, and then we will jump into the agenda. I have loaded up triage. Let me share my screen. Share window here, share. Can everybody see that? Somebody say yes.
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 Yes. All right. Cool. Let's look. I did not get a chance to pre-run through these. I apologize. So I'm reading them cold with everybody else. API server health check failed as a result. API server automatically exits and API server is unavailable. Services exiting.
There was already one related to this.
Yeah, well,
you can assign to me. Because there is a loop of this.
You sure you
want? Yeah, because I discussed with someone from Amazon. So when the problem is that the API server use the service and then points have this reconciler, right? And it doesn't check. So the endpoint state doesn't follow the API server state, right? All these. There is no such a thing of condition ready terminating or whatever. And people want to implement some sort of API server is unhealthy, so that requires to plan the logic of the health checks to the reconciler. But David Leeds is not very favor on that. And
okay. Moving then, hostname override flag on kubelet is no longer used for addresses that hostname value on kubelet. Oh my gosh.
no, this is my fault.
There's already a PR for this.
Excellent. Thank you. You want to triage accept it?
Yes. Sorry.
No sweat. This was a fun one. Multiple PTR records returned for a pod backed by multiple services or backing multiple services. This came up on Slack over the weekend too. Oh, this one's maybe different. This is a deployment one.
This is the one I made as the output of the discussion around the A records.
Great. Okay. So it's a fun conversation. It looks like it's a bug in core DNS, which is allowing for multiple PTR records, which is underspecified probably in the DNS, in our DNS spec. So I'm going to go ahead and triage, accept it, and assign myself. Even though I'm not really working on it, I will track it. Whoops.
If there's time, can you explain the relationship between this project and core DNS in terms of getting them to fix stuff?
Sure, good question. DNS in Kubernetes was an example of how to do service discovery using the Kubernetes service system. And the DNS spec originally was built around service cluster IPs. It was meant to be, relatively simple. And then we added headless services, and then we added external name services, and we added. And we tried to evolve the DNS spec in a more complete way. Clearly, we've missed some cases that could emerge that we didn't think about. We don't own a DNS server. We didn't want to own a DNS server. So Core DNS as a project stepped up to be the DNS server for Kubernetes. So I would say it's an in the family relationship. They're not necessarily beholden to us, but we are probably the largest cause of people to use Core DNS. So they are generally very...
It's in the family, but it's not github.com/Kubernetes. It's
correct.
little bit further out than one of those projects, but still under them.
That's right. It is in CNCF. And we have a good working relationship in as much as there are people actively working on Core DNS, which is a separate problem. Separate problem for all of the open source projects that we, sort of orbit with. Projects become unmaintained over time. So this is a place where, it looks like Chris was working on a solution, Chris O'Haver. So I'll see if I can follow up on that. All right, next. Long-lived TCP connections hang behind a cluster IP. Service is restart.
I'm looking at this one.
Okay.
It's assigned to me.
Okay. Do you want to give us an update? Or do you have an update?
No updates. Still need to build a test case so I can reproduce it.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, it seems like they should reset. Okay, so you're looking at it. I will leave it alone. We'll come back to it next time. Endpoint selected by multiple headless services, only one DNS hostname. This is sort of the same topic, but the other direction, right?
Yeah, this is talking about lack of A records when they expected a record.
I think the answer here is we should update the spec. There's expected to be one canonical A record. Do you want to take that spec update, or do you want me to try to jump on it? I'll put it in my queue. I don't know when I'll get to it.
I can give it a go. I'm new, so I might struggle, but I'll make a pull request, and then you can fix it after that.
Great. Thank you for jumping on the grenade. Oh, sorry. Let me triage accept that. All right. Setting internal traffic policy local leads to an additional 1 second delay. Well, that's a fun one. I haven't seen this.
It looks like this got assigned to me last week or last meeting, but then I didn't dig into it. So my bad.
Okay. You still happy to have it, or do you want somebody else to try to repro?
Yeah, I can still take it.
Okay. As a reminder to everybody on the call here, when we assign you a triage issue, it's not that we expect you to fix the issue, just convince us that it's actually real. Go ask the questions to get enough information to decide whether it's a real bug or not. So please don't hesitate to sign up for being assigned an issue for triage. It's just the triage, not the solution. To allow load balancer source ranges for per port for ingress. This is a feature request.
This is on me. I need to respond to it. We assigned it to me last time. I just haven't. But the idea is this should go to gateway if it goes anywhere.
I like that answer, Rob. And it carries more weight coming from you. Internal DNS cluster to local doesn't work after applying IPVS mode.
I have triaged it as non-reproducible, but it still needs triage. I don't know why.
Oh, yeah, I think the bot does not consider those mutually exclusive, maybe. That's interesting. That seems like a bug in the bot.
I poke him if he can provide some more information, otherwise I close it.
Great, good answer. Flaking test. Where of your time? Let's do one or two more. Flaking tests. Services should update endpoints. Lots of updates here.
Yeah, this is really weird. This is when one endpoint is removed, it answers with the host name of the host. So there are 3 pods. One is delete, and the pod that is being deleted, I think that when it's being deleted, answer with the name of the host. So if there is something, there is a big bug there. I don't know where. The test has one pod that is probing a server, right?
Right.
And then when it finds the 3 endpoints, right? Net server 0, net server 1, net server 2, kills one endpoint, right? So it has to happen a new net server 3, and then net server 0 go up, and it starts polling again. But in the meantime, meanwhile, the first pod is being deleted, it receives the response with the host name of the host when the server 0 was running. So, or there is magically another server in the same port. Or, I don't know. No, the thing is,
Okay.
it happens with IPVS and with kproxy.
It happens with
So,
both of them.
right, so more like the line of thinking is that something happens magically in the process and confuse the namespaces when it's dying, something like that. Because this other thing only
Yeah.
happens with containerd master.
Oh, sorry. Say that last part again.
It only happens in this job that is containerd from master, the containerd 2.0.
But it never happens with containerd stable.
Well, never is a strong statement,
I
but
mean,
I
it
didn't
has
see.
not happened that we've seen.
I didn't see.
Ugh. Yeah, that does sound like an end of life teardown problem.
I don't know. The container they had another critical bug last week too.
Okay. Are you looking at this? Do you have time to look at this, or should we try to get somebody else to look at this?
I don't have time for the next, at least in 2 weeks.
Is there-
I will not be
okay.
checking it.
So everything I said before about being assigned for triage, ignore that. Does anybody want to volunteer to help figure out what the heck's going on with this? Anybody?
No, I can try.
Sorry, who's that? I didn't get the
Sorry.
voice. Damon?
Yep.
Oops. I appreciate the attempt. Anything else we can learn about it will be useful. That sounds very fishy. Let me stop here and we'll go to the agenda. First on the agenda today, Mr. Antonio.
Yeah.
Did you just edit it from 10 minutes to 5 minutes?
Yeah, I didn't want. I see there's another topic, and this is more a pet project I have, and it was so funny. I wanted to share, and I was so happy that I made it. I was able to implement admin network policy and base admin network policy just today. So it's cool. I mean, it's something that it also surprises
Okay.
me.
You
So
have the
I
floor.
wanted
You'll just give you share permission. Hold on.
to share. No, I cannot.
Give me 1 second. Or make co-host. Yes, go for it.
Chrome tab. Okay. So. Okay, this is clearly a project that is for testing, same as cloud provider kind. Another thing, right? Is when like 3 weeks ago we had these network policy jobs that we remember Jay and all these people that were working on this Cycronus thing. They worked hard. They implemented a new framework for testing and so on. And we had Calico in the CI, and we were using that. And it started to fail. When I look at that, it was failing for more than 1 month or something like that. So I had some time, and I remember that I had some branch that I wanted to implement network policies. I never get to it, and I started to ask to Dan and to others, and finally the result is I ended implementing network policies in this project in my branch, and because in my repo, but because it worked, I moved it to Kubernetes so we can use it in the CI. And also talked with the network policy, admin network policy people, and they wanted to use it for their conformance and everything. So right now it's in the Kubernetes 6. And just released it today, the latest version that implements admin network policy and base admin network policy. So what the fun thing is, I wanted to get more involved in this because I never had the opportunity to go deep into network policies, and lately I had to go despite I didn't want it. So the first problem that network policies has is that it has to keep a lot of state, right? Network policy defines how the pods communicate between them. But for defining this, it needs to get the pods and the namespaces labeled, right? And then it uses complex query, right? With selectors, it's simple in user space. We have the libraries and everything. But when you need to move this to a network data plane implementation, is super complex. And the other problem that there is that we also in Kubernetes have a very an order of magnitude that is way larger than, I don't know, traditional VMs or bare metal, right? That environments are much smaller or latencies are higher. Remember, in OpenStack we have 5 minutes to put a VM, right? And the SLO in from scalability, from voltage and scalability team is 5 seconds, right? So it's like way bigger. We're talking about 150 key pop. These are official numbers from like 5 years ago. I think this is higher now. So with all these problems and checking all the different technologies, I checked what happens with eBPF. eBPF has this problem with the lookups. It doesn't allow to have loops, so everything is bounded. So implementing these queries is impossible. You go to Cerium, they need to implement this identity thing that they are sharing across the system. So we are familiar with endpoints and writers and this problem, right? You need to create kind of a super hash map for the cluster, and as soon as you change one label, you need to recompute a lot of things. With IP tables, we know, right? You need to create a lot of rules, save and restore, and that doesn't work out. I was checking NF tables, talking with them, and say, okay, this is kind of more of the same. But then I remember when I worked in like 6, 7 years ago, in this startup in Midokura, we have this open switch model, and they have something that OBN still have, right? The first packet goes through the slog path, goes to user space, and you can do a lookup. So I started to see, well, how can I do this in with current technologies? I was checking with eBPF, that's forbidden by design. They say that they are never going to implement something that goes to user space and waits. That makes sense, right? The technology is built that way. So then I found something that was called NFQ, and then googling for NFQ, I found that Lars had a project with that. So okay, so this is a strong signal that something that is not a toy. Right? People are like Lars is using. So let me explore that, and then I evaluated the trade-offs and say, okay, this is a handicap, a penalty on the first packet latency. In resource consumption, okay, you still need to watch the informers and all the pods. I think that you can optimize on that. Just, I don't know, it's something that you can optimize. Network programming latency is super fast, right? As soon the informer that gets synced with the changes, is immediate. The lookup is going to be immediate, and the complexity was the thing that really got me. Because if you can see there is just with one IP tables and a table rule and 2,000 lines of code, you can implement network policy, admin network policy, base admin network policy, and this latest two, I don't need to data this bank holiday here. So what else? What are the lesson learned? That there are a lot of things in the NetFit subsystem that we don't know. We recently found out about this NF Act that the man implemented for key-proxy for getting some metrics, and mixing different technologies, gives you nice results and with simple solutions. And the other thing is network policies are really hard to implement. I mean, the selector empty versus not set and in YAML or whatever, it took me like several days to figure out. So if you want to play with that, you have the repo there. I seen that Nadia and Surya merging the network API. There are still some bugs. I found one bug in the kernel I need to report to the net filter. But well, that's it. If you want to play or to help there, it's a small project. It's easy to add things that are stable. This is going to be used for CI, but all of you are very welcome to try to improve. That's it.
So, Antonio, do you remember Romana, the project, or was that before you joined Kubernetes?
It was before this Canal Romana thing.
So-
I was in other.
If I recall, they had a very similar approach where they would capture the first packet on a connection. Although what they were doing then, I think, was injecting some identity information on the they were capturing it on the way out from the sender on a new connection establishment and adding some identity information on the wire, which the other end would acknowledge and crypto verify, and then let the connection continue. So similar in spirit, in that it would pop out to user space also through NFQ. So interesting that we have a different implementation of it. Did you try to handle egress policies?
You can handle DNS. I did DNS just for fun. I mean, the other thing is, let me share. The login is awesome. The thing is that it's super easy.
It does handle egress policies, and it passes all of the network policy EDE tests now. So yes.
Cool. Fun.
I was
okay.
trying to find some of the logs.
Are you going to bundle this with Kind?
No, we have kind is Ben and I are very serious about dependencies. We don't want Uber things. So kind is kind, cloud provider kind is cloud provider kind. I could call this kind network policies, but that's not the thing. And Q network policies is Q network policies. I created it as a library, so it's easy to import. Somebody wants to import it, go ahead. But I don't know. Right now, KineNet is out of 3 because some people asked me to have it out of 3. There are some features from some project. I don't remember. KNA or something, KNE or something like that. But well, I still don't have the motivation to try to create my own plugin. But well, who knows?
Okay.
All
right.
Going
Anybody
to
else
answer.
questions?
I was
Sorry, go
going
ahead.
to answer to the question that you say. I checked it on the modifying the packet. The thing is, and I discarded this for 2 reasons. The first one is that every time that I work on something that mangled the packet, the compatibility with, I mean, in your network works. As soon as you have to integrate with different vendors, different network, different everything, you're screwed. I don't know, maybe they wipe out the headers or whatever option that you set or whatever thing.
Yeah, what you
Or
just said reminded me they were playing games with the packet IDs to rewind the counter so that when they resume the connection that they wouldn't end up with out of sequence packets.
yeah, I don't know. There is I had bad experience with that. Cool.
I think that was on the bad side of clever.
This
Clever
is
can be a good
super
thing or
simple.
bad thing.
This is super simple. I mean, you go to the code. In DNS policies, you can implement it in 1 hour. You just get the packet, you just parse the payload, and you decide what to do with that, and you return an 0 or 1. Super simple.
Yeah, we're super excited about this. It's already running in our CI, so like I think it'll be a right place for folks from the network policy API subgroup to start testing new features that we're implementing for ANP, as you mentioned, FQDN, etc.
And frankly, it's a good way to get really concrete, like understanding of. So if we use selectors in this way, does it make it easier or harder to understand what's going on from an implementation point of view? Right? Like there are plenty of parts of network policy that I think if we could go back and do differently, we totally would.
Well, there is something that is awesome. The requirement to have only one set, that's incredible. Because they put this thing, or you select nodes, or you select pods with name selector, or you select namespace selector. Just only one, not because the combination on the other 2 is like, oh my god.
I mean that was a lesson that we learned pretty hard, Andrew. I remember having that argument about should we make them composable? Like no, just don't do it.
Yeah,
That's
it
really
was
cool.
good. It made me smile pretty big when Antonio was giving us that feedback, because like we've had a few implementations obviously, but to get it from Antonio, that was good. So we were happy.
Every now and then we make a right decision and we can, pat ourselves on the back.
Every now and then, yeah.
It's rare, right?
It is rare.
Okay. Anybody else have questions for Antonio? Okay, cool.
And if you want to get more involved in this tool, come hang out with us in the Network Policy API subgroup. Like, we're going to be looking at it and playing with it. So
are there, just between you and me, nobody's listening, are there any ambitions to productionizing this?
Look, it kind of started as look, that's the thing. Kind of started as a joke, and now we know people running it in production. So it's going to depend on the people and the use cases. People want. I mean, the code is there.
Do you want to bring it into Kubernetes SIGs?
It's already Kubernetes.
Oh, it's in there already? Okay, cool. I missed that.
Yeah, because I mean, I it's for CI. I'm not going to put Antonio AO / network policies network CI. Right? The CI
right.
runs in Kubernetes / Kubernetes, and
that makes sense. Okay. Next on the agenda, Mache, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
You want to present, or do you just want to talk?
I have the doc. I can share that doc unless you want to just share it. I don't have any slides. So just want to kind of bring that to attention of SIG networking. Last 2 weeks or even 3 weeks in our multi-networking work group, I saw after EU KubeCon, direction was to look at DRA. So we started doing that, and what will it mean for us to kind of what there are requirements that we're trying to have on multi-networking, what it will mean to kind of integrate with DRA, right? And we come up with some few pointers that we kind of come up. Probably they're not fully flashed out. I saw your comments, Antonio, and I opened the doc for comments as well. So maybe I can share. Maybe that's going to be easier for me.
I gave you co-host.
Thank
so
you.
Go ahead.
DRA, not sound share. So the few pointers I want to go over is basically we're looking at DRA as our API vehicle. That's what basically it is. We don't want to introduce any new stuff, any expansion of at least the pod spec section. We use resource claims. It can point to a custom parameter reference to any CRD you wish. Basically what we want to do with pod network, right? I think this is where we would take resource claim as that. I'm still kind of vague about this redesign for DRA. So I saw the other, I think, Antonio, you pointed me to this redesign of DRA cap that I think got merged or is happening. So I assume there's 2 of those, but I think the redesign is all about the scheduler side, the kind of the resource handling, not about the kind of base of how things are referenced from the pod. I assume that doesn't change, right? Or I'm wrong here, Antonio. Team, you're shaking head, so I'm not sure.
Well, so between Alpha 2 or between whatever 28 and 30, there was a second mode proposed, which is more self-describing mode. Like I have a parameter X and its value is Y, and I have a parameter A and its value is B, and then you can sort of select on that. The change that I am looking at next is an even further simplification of that.
But that's still about scheduler, right? Is that true?
It's about describing the thing that you want to use in a way that we can evaluate without understanding what it is. So
exactly.
You
so
say,
that's scheduler side, right? So I'm not even looking at
plus autoscaler, right? And like anything that needs to reason about the relationship between a workload and a resource can make this abstract mapping without knowing the difference between a network and a GPU and an
Sure.
FPGA.
And then the question, does that affect how the pod spec and that reference is done, or that not touched yet? Do you know?
I would like to see that simplified. So the problem that I have with the DRA experience today is there's too many objects that a user has to write. That, like, in order to get DRA,
Yeah,
done,
I'm
you have to
lost.
write.
I saw the two caps that I mentioned, and I kind of know that there is a resource claim, and then I look the other one. There is like resource claim, like, and there is no diagram about at least drawing those up. What's what? And,
there is a diagram somewhere, and it's really complicated. There's
okay.
like 5 things you need to touch in order to make a DRA
Okay.
work today. I think we can get that down to like 2, where you just write a resource claim. You write think of it this way. This is what I'm pushing. It's super prototype. Like John and Patrick are working on like a simulation environment right now. There's a resource claim that looks a whole lot like a pod. There's a sort of qualitative statement. I need things that match these properties, like a node selector, and a quantitative statement. I need this many foo-bars and this many frobnicators. And when you put those 2 things together, you can select any device on the cluster because you have enough information to know which ones match and how many of them do I need. Now, how do we apply that to network?
How would I apply that? No, that's because network can be quantitative. And a simple example was an IP is quantitative value, right? And basically then I can say where it's available and how many IPs I have on which node or kind of things. It's just very basic. That can be extrapolated to bandwidth or what's not, MTU or MTU not, but bandwidth or what's other resources you can quantify your network. But the simplest one, how many IPs available I have per either cluster, if it's a global IP or per node, right? And I'm not even going there because all those refactors, maybe we slightly off topic here, there will be just gains that if we integrate with the array, we will just get them, right? I'm more focused on what sort of multi-networking pieces we would like to kind of have to still use the DRA, right? And with all the kind of improvements that you're working for DRA. So that's kind of how we looked at it. Rather than digging deeper into the kind of the selector stuff, because even our current, like with all the kind of discussion around multi-networking, we even stripped down the capability of network being selectively available across nodes, which if we were to kind of integrate with the air, we get it for free with all the kind of rework that you're working on with everyone, right? So I'm not even looking at that. I'm just looking at the API aspects and how we would like to see this stuff to kind of, if we were to use it for multi-networking, what we would like to get from this, right? And the first thing is the resource claim, and maybe that's going to slightly change. So that's something that and by the way, I'm bringing this up here, but I think Antonio, you mentioned we should go to the DRA workgroup. That's my goal. That's my next step. But I wanted to bring it up here first since we had the meeting this week. So why not? So resource claim, basically we want it to replace our pod network, what was in our initial cap, right? But we want to ensure the resource claim can be in some ways handled specially for us, right? Because I don't want the resource claim to be a like I think we had a discussion, Antonio, in the chat, as an additional thing. That should not be the case, right? We want a resource claim to define what networks do I want to put to my pod, and end of statement, fully, exhaustively, and in not a form where DRA defines some pods and the CNI defines some other. No, there's only one way, and that will be either that or this, right? So that's what I'm trying to get to, right? Or even resource claim becomes the way to define networking, and if someone doesn't care, they have something that I do call out over here, a default network. So I would like to have a resource claim representing, and this is what I'm trying to get to, because this is what we, in the multi-networking, kind of the whole effort is all about having a handler in Kubernetes for a network, right? What I'm connected to.
But we are in circle in this discussion.
Yeah,
So
I
in,
think so.
in multi-network, we want a network. And in Kubernetes, we say, okay, tell us what you want the network. And we are in this back and forth. And the thing is, the use cases, and we go, okay, multiple interfaces and the other QB thing. And then we are with this back and forth. So this is the problem is, you want a network, what is the design of the network? How is going to be compatible with the system things? How are we going, are the namespaces going to be working uh, split on different network? How is network policies going to be implemented? We are always in the same cycle. I mean, I know that you
So
want a network, but we have these other questions, and we need to answer these other questions too.
we cannot answer them right away. That's why this is something that I think we are again off topic to that. We didn't answer them because we will never finish this. And this is something that I'm learning from the gateway API folks, then from the V6, where basically we try to handle everything at once. My goal was to phase it out and basically define things in chunks. So first one, we want to just introduce and I know that it doesn't define the whole thing, but then we're gonna we're gonna commit another 5 years to define, okay, how then this object interacts with network policies, or if we even implement it for that, because that's another thing. It doesn't have to be, right. It's not like, unless we say that we have to define everything from scratch. My goal wasn't to define it because it's going to take us another 2 years to define all those aspects for every single feature, how it interacts with multi-networking, and then we never move on with everything because we're going to just bog down with all the other interactions. So that's why I want to kind of get the first foot in to introduce the handler for the object, and then from there build on top of that, because otherwise I don't think, especially when this is so complex system, and but basically having all the options possible on the table, because you now want to know how that's going to interact. That's going to take me another 5 years to go there to figure out all the possible contact points, right? So that's why for now the first step is to provide the handler, and then build on top of that. And as we go iteratively, okay, now let's think about how network policies fit, how gateway API fits, how service-sider fits, how
Maciek,
so and so forth, right?
that's no. I mean, that's why we have CRDs. So you're saying, oh, we are going to add a field core that we still don't know how it's going to work, and we still don't know the semantics. We still don't know how people is going to implement it. And that's what I'm saying is, I know that's complex, but you are asking, okay, let's put something to elaborate in core, and the bar in Kubernetes is super high.
No, I know.
mean, but it's super high to the level that people complain. But the problem is, it's complex, and adding something like that without knowing what's going to happen, who is going to maintain that?
I think there's another aspect of this, which is like iteration is important, right? We can't sit and cook until the whole meal is complete, because it will fail. Like Maciej said, we'll never finish it, right? But there's a legitimate difference between things we don't know and things that we suspect strongly, and we shouldn't build things that are counter to things that we suspect strongly. Like, we should be honest about what we suspect and make sure that we're at least directional with those. So for example, one of the things that I've sort of been talking about off and on for quite a long time, but has recently sort of gotten a little bit more attention from API machinery folks, was, what if we had a way to extend an existing resource, right? To build a stronger relationship between two things. Joe just shared with me some interesting docs about, like, in object validation against CRD schemas. So what if, for example, networking was an extension to pod? Like, if you install the networking system as a resource extension, then you can see the networking stuff, and if you don't, you don't see it. That seems like it would be great, right?
That would be great. Yeah,
that would
solve the
sort of
whole
answer.
problem.
Yeah, that would answer a lot of these questions. So if we suspect that such a thing might be coming, how do we prepare? How do we set things up in a way today so that when that lands, it just makes things better, right?
That's a
versus
new thing. That's
if
the
we
first
think,
time I'm hearing about that team. But yeah, that would be
cool.
definitely cool, because then even that, because having something flagged, right? Because I think that's the main concerns from Antonio, where okay, this is going to be always enabled, right? This way, this can be an add-on, right? You
Right.
want the networking or not, right? And that expands things, or and then you have this complexity, or you don't, right?
So, for the sake of the record, because this is a recorded call, that is not a committed project. That is an
Sure.
idea that we are talking about, that has come up a dozen times in a dozen different places as, boy, if we had a way to do this, life would be better. It's an enormous project. Like, it's on the order of magnitude of custom resources, right? Like, it will take a couple of person years to really pull this off and productionize the idea. It doesn't even have a cap yet. So please take it with a grain of salt, but it could be directional, right? Like the thing that we need to focus on most in the project, putting on my SIG architecture hat, is how to enable all sorts of other ideas without absorbing the entirety of them.
That's
right?
fair. So okay, so this is where I think I have other items on what we would like to have, like, and I'm calling like claim being on the pod level, which I heard, Antonio, you mentioned it's already on container level and you can use it. If that's the case, then probably this is no op.
Yep.
Let me, and I talked with 1 second with the owner. I think that right now is at the pod level, and containers can reference the claim. I don't know how it's implemented in Curie, but that's why this working group is important, right? I didn't did the exercise to go in the code and say, oh, from networking we have this use case. If we can hook in the claim in the pod spec, we don't want to have it in the container, right? I think that's legit, and that the DRA
Right.
people
That's
will
why
accept.
I'm calling it out, right? So
Okay,
that's
cool, cool.
basically, so that's why I'm calling it out, to have it, and exactly because they use the claim same like volumes, right? You have to define the volumes, and then you hook them up in specific containers. For net device, that doesn't work, right? For resources, yes. For net devices, so I'm calling it out because, as you said, I don't think on that level they can accept that, right? So exactly, that's why I'm calling out. So basically, then the default network, again, to having the handler and default case, but this is all to the debacle of I assume to what maybe team said, and whether we can fit. Do we need to do any of that? And then the pod status as well. We would want to have basically view the IPs that a pod gets, right, in some way. There was a alternative. What we initially thought and think, to have that pod status, to have this, right, all the IPs that we have. In some ways, that special resource claim that's for networking, all of them will trickle to that. The alternative is just, okay, let's put it on resource claim, which unfortunately builds an alternative way of how things advertise, and it's not standardized, right? Because I have then pod IP status there, and then the other IPs are, or all the IPs then will be completely different place. But maybe that's an approach if we go all the way in, right? So we push all the IPs over there on all those things, right? So but then the number one in terms of scale, because then we have multiple objects with the IPs for that, and we watch all of them, right? So there is a ramification of scale for watching one object versus multiple for if I have multiple IPs pair, right? So that's a last thing, one more thing that we were thinking. And I think that the one statement for multi-network is, and most important thing, is value added, right? We don't want to just integrate with the array for the sake of moving away and not touching core, because that's the whole point of the working group, right? We have to have a value added for users to now, okay, go define the resource claim, point it to your, let's say, network attachment definition for Multus, and then everything works. And if that's the only thing that we get, so we replace now annotation, from annotation moved to a just the array reference, and we don't get anything else out of it, there is no point for like users of Multus to do that, right? Because there is no value added in it.
I mean, you don't think the improvement in API and verification of that API is itself a valuable improvement, or just not valuable enough?
It's not valuable enough. Today, I look at pod annotations and I see, okay, I connected network ABCD. Now I have to go to every resource claim and see which network attachment do I, as an example, go to those and see how things are there, right? So from that point of view,
for sure, the goal with DRA is to offer a sort of last mile mechanism for connecting the things in the thats into the containers in a way that the kubelet and the agents on the machine can understand.
Right.
There is a UX aspect to this that I don't think is as well fleshed out. Right. Today we do not have an answer, like you said, resource claim status. Should that be absorbed into the pod status so that we have a single UX to look at? That could be an option. We need to think hard about the trade-offs for there.
Right.
Another option is actually maybe pod is itself already too monolithic and should be decomposed. There are problems with the size of pods, right?
Yeah. So that's, I think that's the kind of summary of the things that we would work, because having the DRA as just a and team, that's what it is, right? Having just moving from annotation to DRA and then having another hoop over this is just a US cumbersomeness introduced to existing stuff, right?
I was reviewing yesterday the Gateway API changes, and they have way more obvious, and I don't hear this complaint. I mean, they have more complexity than two things.
Are you?
And
what do you refer to?
they model what I'm saying is I mean I really want to go deeper into this thinking, because as I say, I was checking yesterday with Rob the Gateway API, how they work, all the objects that they have, all the relations that they have, and they are way more complex, and they are all out of tree with CRDs, and never heard all these things about the US is not a benefit or
I
something like
think
that.
you're mixing two things, and keep in mind, Gateway API is an add-on to the pod. So level of integration with the core kubelet configuration of a networking inside namespace is completely diametrical different in complexity between Gateway API and multi-networking. So let's not compare those two. And what I'm comparing here, the UX is versus the existing stuff. And I'm picking on Multus because that's what today exists, and a lot of users use that. We have an existing user base that uses Multus in terms of annotations, having everything in the pod's annotation, right? For everything in one place. If you say for those users, the only value added from moving to multi-networking effort was to, okay, now you additionally have to create the resource claim and then point your NAT through that, and then all your status is on each individual resource claim, and that's the only value added you gain. Why would I bother, right? If I don't,
I'm sorry, Machi, but I don't think that's an argument to say, oh, because
no, that is argument, because it has to be a value added for me to do this additional hoops, right? What's the point of this, right?
So there are several things that I think is, I don't know, once you make the contract with core, you need to maintain. I mean, you move to
that's fair.
you need to
I
add
agree on
all
that.
these things. You need to add all these
but this
things,
is where, Antonio, we have to have tests coverage, and basically definitely that every project, and I would sign up for that to introduce that, right, and handle that. And I agree with you, maintaining that's part of the kind of the whole thing.
But the thing is, the Multus, I mean, the Multus use case is adding an interface to a pod, nothing else, with some parameters. Not even have a scheduler. Saying that the source claim is not a net benefit, I really don't. I'm missing something. But it's really a big net benefit over that. If you are able to make
what is the benefit then?
You want to add an interface in some host, and then you have a scheduler that works for you. You don't need to do everything manually. The way that I see it now is everybody's doing manual things, right?
Fair.
I mean, they
I think
even
the scheduler,
Multus that they use Ansible or Terraform, they will be doing the same. So Kubernetes is not adding much value. I agree with you there. But what I'm saying is, at the end, it's a network interface plus and configuration thing that the user wants.
So I think the scheduler coming from DRA will be a value added. Okay, I can take a look on that. So maybe that's one that I'm missing over here. But the statement kind of, maybe that part will be the value added here.
Well, I don't know, but what I'm trying to say is that we are going from 0 to 100. I think what I'm saying is, let's do the first step. Let's have something working. I mean, if it doesn't work, I'm the first to say, look, I agree with you. I mean, it doesn't work. But I think that it will work.
We're coming up on the time, so I want to make sure that anybody else who wants to chime in has an opportunity. We've got a fair number of people on the call, a lot of quiet. The main advantage that I see of trying to squeeze network and DRA together is that we have one way of doing things instead of two, right? And that two impacts the scheduler, the autoscaler, the kubelet, the pod API, everything that we think about that it touches. Having two is always going to be worse than having one, especially because they are fundamentally very similar in form, although they use different words. If that doesn't work, okay, we will look at what our options are at that point. But I've been saying from the beginning of DRA, like, these things feel very similar. We need to find a way. In all the conversations I'm having around DRA, the multi-network use case is very much in my mind. So Maciej, I'm happy to catch up. We're out of time today, obviously. I'm happy to catch up again sometime on Slack or wherever, just to brainstorm what requirements you think maybe I don't cover. I see a hand up, Pete.
Yeah, so just a very quick thing about DRA and multi-network and conceptual thing about them. So to my mind, DRA is a very big, complex, heavyweight thing that a small minority of your pods will need. Multi-network, using DRA is fine if multi-network is a small, heavyweight thing that a small minority of your team pods will need. But if we're thinking of use cases where many pods, most of your pods need to be in multiple networks, then it becomes, the two don't seem to fit together very well. I'm not saying that going to use DRA is the wrong thing. It just feels not quite right to me, and I don't know what the answer is.
Thank you. The fact that DRA is perceived as a big, heavy thing is part of the problem. I think the current design of DRA is overly complicated, which makes it feel like a big, heavy thing. I think that we can streamline that. Like, the analogy to volumes is pretty apt. Like, lots of people use volumes, and they're not as simple as maybe they could be, but they're also not prohibitively complicated. Whether multi-network is in fact a thing that a small number of pods use or a thing that the vast majority of pods use, I think is very much up for debate, depending on where you sit and what your experience with the world is, or what your use case is. If you're a telco, probably all of your pods are going to use multi-network, and if you're not a telco, probably none of your pods are going to use multi-network. And so on the whole, my belief, with relatively little data, so please challenge me, my belief is a very small number of the total pool of pods in the world will be using multi-network. For any one user, it may be the majority of their pods. Dan?
So I was going to say, an example of something that we use Multis for that is not telco in OpenShift is creating egress router pods, where it uses a MAC VLAN to get a static IP so that you can then route traffic through it to an external host with a static IP. And that is something that definitely lots of non-telco customers are using. So I think there are plenty of little one-off simple cases where it's not just the people who need 12 NICs in each pod.
Sure, that's fair. I didn't mean to denigrate telcos in that. I meant as sort of the obvious use case. Sure, once you build something, people find ways to use it, for sure. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here talking about Kubernetes, because this is certainly not where I would have predicted we would have ended up 10 years ago. All right, we're at time. Anybody have last thought? All right, I will stop the recording.